What's up, humble farmers? Taiki here. So some of you may know that before I got into crypto, I was a professional poker player. I was grinding online at poker sites and also in real life casinos, even going up against the likes of Chris Moneymaker, who you can argue is the reason poker is so big today. So poker has taught me a lot of lessons, and today I want to share what those lessons were and how that allowed me to be a pretty successful and profitable crypto trader. So I started playing poker seriously in college, and I was able to turn a $100 bankroll into a $10,000 one just by playing home games with my fellow students. And obviously I was like pretty young, 21, 22, and I got pretty cocky back then. And so when I graduated college in 2019, I decided to book a trip to Vegas to play the WSOP that summer. So I bought and registered for a tournament, and I was planning to play 2 5-cash games that entire summer. And needless to say, I got my ass handed to me. I lost like $4,000 to $5,000, which was half my roll. I didn't really have a concept of like bankroll management, and I was devastated, right? And that's when it really hit me that I'm not good at all. Like, I suck. And if I wanted to win, I had to take it like really seriously. I had to like study. And I have a pretty obsessive and competitive personality. So I said, hey, like fuck it, like I'm gonna buy Pile Solver, which is like a game theory calculator for poker. I bought some courses and I just studied religiously. So when I started working in 9 to 5, I would come home around like 6, eat dinner, 6:30, and then until like 10 p.m. I just studied and played online poker. So that kind of was like my schedule back then, right? And I got better, and I was like making decent money for like 6 months or so. And in 2020, I got laid off because of COVID. And of course, like I don't really know what to do at the time, but I was like at home all day. I'm like, oh, I might as well play poker, right? And there was like this arbitrage, or like a poker player arbitrage, where, or I guess it only applied to me, but I would take all these unemployment checks that the government has given me, and I would just like max deposit them into poker sites because these poker sites had like these deposit bonuses on. Because the world shut down, all the bad players that would regularly play at like casinos, if they wanted to gamble, they had to play online, right? So the online poker games were super soft at the time. So I was like, after COVID, like I was like making a lot more money. I had like a lot more edge. And I can show like my poker equity chart, but it was a pretty steady eddy, right? I was just like 6 tabling, grinding, and that's when I was like, you know what? Like my old job offered to re-employ me later in 2020, but I said, nah, like I want to give it a shot, right? Because if not now, when will I ever try, right? Because I always felt like I could be a poker pro, so I decided to give it a shot. So at that point, I was literally all in, and my like every day I would wake up around 8, go on a run, come home, shower, study until noon or so, just because, I mean, who the fuck is playing online poker at like 10 a.m., right? So after lunch, I would just grind until like 5 or 6 p.m. And that would just be my everyday. And I think the one important thing that poker teaches you is how to be mentally resilient, how to deal with uncertainty, and I guess like being okay with non-linear payoff structures. Because if you think about like society, right? Society teaches us to think in linear payoff functions. You put in the work and then you get paid, right? So x-axis is the time and y-axis is the payoff. You go to high school, you put in your work, you graduate. Then you go to college, 4 years, you graduate and get a degree. And you get a degree, you get a job, you work, you get paid, right? But in poker, that's not really the case. Of course, you want to make money, but there could be instances where you're doing everything right, and you can just lose money in like 3 months. And that literally sucks, right? Because nothing is guaranteed in the world of markets or poker or gambling. We have to be okay with that. And I think one way we cope with that is thinking about everything in terms of expected value. The idea with poker is that, as long as you put in the volume and you continue to make plus EV decisions, right? Decisions that have a positive expected value, then in the long run, you're gonna make money, right? And whatever happens in the short run, you just have to deal with. And one example that I think of around like mental resilience is Connor Dryden. So in 2014, he entered this big one-for-one tournament, which was like a $1 million buy-in. And he ran aces against aces, and he actually lost, right? Like aces versus aces, because the other guy hit a flush. Like super unlucky. He just like lost $1 million, and he looked devastated, right? I think it would have been easy for a lot of people to like just give up at that point and be like, yeah, like poker is not for me. But he kept grinding. He's still grinding. And actually, like next year, right, in 2015, he entered a $500,000 buy-in tournament, and he actually finished third place for $3.2 million. I don't think a lot of people can do that, right? Like, you know, you bust, you lose $1 million, and then next year you just go for it again. That takes some guts. So I'm not like a high roller like Connor Dryden, but I would play cash games, not tournaments. And looking back, I was looking at my statistics, and I realized that over hundreds and hundreds of sessions, thousands of hours I put in, I realized I only won 55% of my sessions. Like, you would think that if I'm winning, right, I would win like 70% or 80%, right? But no, like like 45% of the time I was losing. Like, how can that be, right? And you know, that's like a concept in markets as well, but it's not about how much how often you win, right? It's not about your win rate. It's more about how much do you win when you're right, and how much do you lose when you're wrong. I'm sure there are traders that have, let's say, a 20% win rate that make a lot more money than people with an 80% win rate, because maybe the guy with 80% win rate, he just makes a little whenever he wins, and sometimes when he loses, he just like gets wrecked. Whereas with a 20% win rate guy, maybe they only lose like 1% of his portfolio when they lose, but whenever he wins, or whenever he makes money, he wins like 20% of his portfolio or something. And like that's all it is, right? You have to minimize your losses and maximize your wins, because you're bound to lose in poker. You're bound to lose in markets. You have to be okay with that, right? If losing like fucks you up mentally, then like the markets are not for you. Poker is not for you. And because I lost so often in poker, I think it kind of made me okay, like losing in the markets, and it allows me to bounce back, right? It's like, oh yeah, like I lost money today, I lost money last month, whatever, right? I'll make it back. That sounds pretty casual, right? Maybe that's a little complacent, but I do think that type of innate self-belief is really important whenever you're navigating with money, and also to take the emotions out of it. So yeah, I think the most important lesson poker teaches you is more psychological rather than like technical skills, because both markets and poker, it's a very lonely profession. It's literally you up against the world. You can't really blame your teammates, right? You can't blame your company. If you lose money, if you suck, then it's on you, right? And you just have to be okay with that. And tilt is also a concept that applies to both crypto and poker, where, and the definition of tilt is something bad happens and then you get all flustered and then you just make poor decisions. And obviously, like I used to tilt a lot. Fortunately, the way I think about it is I think I front loaded all my tilt when I had a lot less money, like during poker. So now that I have a little bit bigger of a bankroll, and like whenever I would lose money, I wouldn't tilt. And I actually think poker is more tilting than markets, because at least with markets, the general drift is up, right? Markets tend to go up over time. Whereas for poker, like, you can't really rely on like your money earning more money, right? There's like no compounding in markets. And back in my poker days, I would, like, it got really bad at one point where, sometimes I would like play really good for a week straight, right? And I'm making money, and then like on Friday, right, something bad happens, I tilt, and then I just like give up all my gains just because I tilt, and then I like lose a few stacks in like 30 minutes. So like 5 days of good work goes away in 30 minutes, and like that itself is tilting, right? You tilt and then you lose money, and then that creates more tilt. And then like it got really bad, and I used to meditate 30 minutes every single day, like literally breathing exercises, like just to ground myself. Like, it's okay, Taiki, like you lost, it's okay, it happens, like everyone loses, it's fine. So once you play enough poker, you kind of get detached from this idea of money. It skews your perception of money, right? Because it becomes normal to lose money, right? On a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, which is both good and bad, right? Because at least in markets, like whenever I lose a lot of money, it's like, okay, like it happens, like whatever, right? Which is good, right? Because if if you get emotional every time you lose, then like you're just like not gonna make it, right? In this world. But it's also bad because it's like, it kind of like, it's like sometimes I kind of like don't value money in the right way, where I made this video where like I punted like $50,000 into like this butthole token, and I lost like 25K. And looking back, I'm like, yeah, that was kind of dumb, but like I thought the risk reward was still worth it, right? Like, I thought that was like a pretty rational decision. Okay, maybe not really, but but then if I go to like, some restaurant, and then like this random deli is charging $25 for a sandwich. I'm like, dude, like this is a scam, right? So it's like I'm not willing to spend $25 on food, but if I lose 25K, it's like whatever. Like, I mean, it does get kind of dangerous, and I'm not sure if this is a I'm not sure if this is like a good example, but I remember a time where Antonio Esfandiari, like a poker pro, he did a prop bet with Bill Perkins for like $50,000, and Antonio basically had to like not walk, or like he had to lunge everywhere. So it would be a workout, right? And like his body would be aching, and it's like, oh my god, right? And then like I think on day 2 he was playing a tournament at the WSOP, and because like his legs hurt so bad, he couldn't get up to go to the bathroom. So he was like, you know what, like I want to win 50K. So he decided to like just pee in a bottle, like literally at the poker table, and he actually got disqualified. He actually ended up winning the prop bet, so he got 50K. But then afterwards, he's like, yeah, like I'm really ashamed of myself. I like embarrassed myself for $50,000. This is like not a good standard to set for my children. Which is kind of ridiculous, right? But like, as a poker player, right, it's like the means justify the end, right? Like you're willing to pee in a bottle in public, you're willing to stay up until like 4 a.m. To like win money. Like one time I was playing this session at Bay 101 in San Jose, and I think in like the first hour I lost like $2,000, like 4 buy-ins playing 2-5, and I was like fucking pissed. I was like, bro, like these fucking idiots, like they're fucking trash, but I'm down 2K. So I was like determined to like win. So I ran out of money. So I actually drove to a bank, withdrew $1,000 or $2,000, drove back, started playing again, and it took me. I actually stayed at that casino for like 20 hours. Like literally, like I would just chug coffee, pounding coffee. Like this 22-year-old kid was just like like playing poker, and they actually kicked me out because I'm not sure if this is like a law, or maybe it's just a rule at this particular casino at the time, but they didn't allow any individual person to stay for longer than 20 hours in like a single setting. So I was like, bro, like what the fuck, right? I'm like literally paying rake. Like, why are you kicking me out? It's probably like a good thing they have this rule, but sometimes like you just kind of lose sense of reality for the sake of winning money. And of course, like maybe that's not like normal or human, but I think that's kind of like the personality trait that you need in order to be good at poker. And I think you can kind of apply that to markets, because the markets are really, really hard, right? It's hard to win in markets. So if you're gonna make money, then you have to have some sort of edge. And like, how do you find that edge? You have to work your ass off. Nothing is free in life, right? You have to work for it. So while all that was happening, I wasn't really aware of crypto. I mean, I bought Bitcoin here and there, like earlier, because I needed to like use Bitcoin to deposit into these offshore poker sites, because you can't connect bank accounts as like a U.S. citizen. So I guess that was like a single use case for Bitcoin. But I was like, yeah, like I mean, crypto is like whatever, right? I'm just gonna play poker. But like two things happened. So in 2020, there was this thing called DeFi summer, where on chain, the coins on the Ethereum blockchain just started pumping, right? Like DeFi tokens. It went from, I think, $3 billion, like the collective market cap of DeFi tokens went from $3 billion to $200 billion in a span of under a year. So everything was popping off. And also, as the world started to open up after COVID, right? As people were like, okay, we're not all gonna die. Casinos started to open up. And if I think about it, right, it's like, maybe the reason I was able to make so much money in poker, like online poker in 2020, was because like all the bad players were forced to play online, right? Like they couldn't go to casinos. So once the casinos started to open up, all the bad players started to play in real life, and then the online poker games got really, really hard. It's kind of this idea that it's better to be a C player in an A industry than an A player in a C industry, right? It's a lot easier to make money in an industry that's growing than in an industry that's shrinking. And ironically, right? I mean, I wasn't like really thinking like too critically at the time, but like actually, I was like playing poker like online when the games were really, really good. And as the games got really, really hard, like I was like really lucky, right? Like right place, right time. I made a lot of poker friends that was also speculating in crypto, and I'm like, you know what, like, I don't think I'm good enough in poker to really make it. So let me try crypto, right? And that does take some humility, right? Because I mean, I honestly thought that I could be a pro, make 100K, 200K a year playing poker. My numbers were I think 80K a year or so, or like 60 to 80K, I forget the exact numbers, but. And I was yeah, maybe I can get better, but it seems like poker is a better place to do it. Crypto is a better place to look at. So yeah, I started to dabble on Ethereum blockchain. I would buy coins on Coinbase, Bridge, and then buy stuff on DeFi stuff. And I realized that I was getting dumped on, right? I would buy these tokens that these whales were farming with their stable coins, and then I was literally their yield, right? Where does the yield come from? This motherfucker right here, right? And I was bro, I'm the fish here, right? I'm the exit liquidity. I don't want to be exit liquidity. I want to dump on exit liquidity. So that's when, in 2020, I started to do some yield farming. So I would deposit, stable coins, Ethereum, into smart contracts and get tokens and then dump that. And this strategy became really popular in 2021 when, and also because I started my YouTube channel. I taught people how to farm on the Polygon blockchain. And back then, the meta was so insane, right? You just literally everything would print money. You would deposit money, you get tokens, some pleb out there is buying these tokens, and then you just dump it and you rinse and repeat. And one way to make money from Ponzi's is to understand that it is a Ponzi, and then just ape money into it anyways, right? And then of course there's two types of Ponzi's, right? It's a token itself can be a Ponzi, or you literally farm something, right? That has no value, and then you dump it on people. And I was more doing the latter, though I would sometimes do the former. And yes, everything I'm saying right now sounds super degenerate, right? It's why would you spend, or why would you ape that much money into these animal farms, right? But back then I think that was the optimal strategy. The play was to check the chain, right? Look out for new projects that would launch, and just ape money into it before anyone else, and just farm and dump while you can, and then move on, right? Rinse and repeat. I had this video back then of how to yield farm, and then I was yeah, these are my commandments, right? Just don't get attached, and dump. And peak yield farming was when Mark Cuban aped $1 million into Iron Finance, and he was whoa, this is crazy, guys. And then it went to zero because he aped into a Ponzi, and then he called for regulation. So that's always a funny story back then. But going back to the optimal strategy one, right? It's in hindsight, I think whenever a new meta or a new game is introduced, financial game, whether it be poker or crypto, I think the natural inclination is for people to be pretty conservative early on, right? Because what is this? I don't know what's going on. I don't want to risk too much money, so they would just put only a little bit of money, right? But actually, it's optimal to ape as early as possible, if that makes sense. It kind of reminds me of a time where back in online poker days, right? The most successful players, they had these insanely aggro strategies because they realized that big blind was folding way too much to a button open, so they would open 100% of hands on the button, and then the big blind would fold. Some players would also overfold to turn in river bets. So some pros, they would automatically just bluff flop turn river 90% of the time because they knew that they were their opponent was overfolding the river. Even though that wasn't optimal, but given how other players were acting, that was the optimal strategy, right? Exploitative strategy. And similarly, I think because everyone was conservative when it comes to yield farming, as long as you could verify that the smart contract was not going to rug, the optimal strategy was to just ape as much money into these smart contracts as early as possible, even though it doesn't feel right, And nowadays, right, now yield farming is pretty much a solved game. So everyone knows what to do at this point. But that's there's no more edge in yield farming. But back then there was edge, right? And the edge was not buying the farm token and then aping size as big as you can. Of course, you can't open yourself up to the risk of ruin, right? So you always have to balance those things. And the example I think about is Isolder in poker. So Isolder, aka Victor Blum, was this Swedish young poker pro that came out of nowhere and started crushing online poker games, won millions. And everyone thought he was a fish, he sucked because he was super aggro, right? And I'm all the pros were oh yeah, this guy sucks. He's gonna I'm gonna beat this guy, right? I'm gonna take his money. But turns out he took everyone's money because back then an aggro strategy worked. But where Victor Blum went wrong is I think he kind of got way too addicted to the dopamine and competing in the games where he was just playing for the dopamine and playing to compete, and he wasn't really studying. I think he would sometimes play high stakes open face Chinese, like a game he's never studied before, just because he wanted battle, and then he would like lose money. And like nowadays, like we don't really know what he's doing, right? He kind of blew up, I think. I mean, no one really knows, right? But you want to be able to be aggro early into a meta, but at some point, right, you can't just keep doing the same thing forever, right? Because the meta changes. And I think about Isildur, right? Like you want to be in Isildur like early, and then you want to be more conservative later on once the game becomes more solved. I'm not sure if that's like a fair example, but I thought it was like an interesting case study of like how making parallels between poker and crypto. So yeah, I'm not really encouraging everyone to just bet it all on, like go all in every single time, right? I'm just saying that like in poker, in markets, whenever there's like a new meta, whenever there's like a new market that people don't understand, that's where there's maximum edge, right? Like when there's zero edge, there's zero alpha in markets, that's solved, right? Like yield farming at this point is pretty much a solved game. So yes, you can make money, but you can't really get outsized returns. It's like when there's a lot of uncertainty and when there's an unsolved game is when you should be going really hard. Like, or not, maybe like not going hard, like putting all your money, but you should be dedicating a lot of hours into like fucking around and finding out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, look at what other people are doing, what people are doing, and then figure out, okay, like given this like the zeitgeist of the current meta, like what is the optimal strategy, right? Like not only do you have to play the markets, but you have to play other people, and you also have to bet in like size and have enough conviction in your ideas where you're able to deal with the volatility and all the variance. It's kind of funny because in poker, like my equity chart's like pretty up and to the right, but I mean, like I'm happy about that, but that probably means that I wasn't taking on enough risk, right? It would have been normal. Like I probably would have made a lot more money with like a lot more swings if I decided to like play higher stakes, because I do think I could have played higher stakes, but like maybe in poker that was like my preferred style of like just being a nit when it comes to bankroll management and I guess like game selection. But in crypto it's really different, right? Like in crypto, if you like watch my videos, I tend to just go aggro. Like I tend to just bet size and things I really believe in, which is kind of weird, right? Like how am I a nit in poker but so aggro in crypto? Like you would think, but like I also think that poker teaches you that you have to fuck around and find out. Like you have to try different things, see what works, and then figure out like what strategy works for you, right? You can't, like whatever style I have probably doesn't work on you, because you're like my brain and your brain, it's wired different. What you're good at is probably different from what I'm good at, and vice versa. And you have to figure it out, right? You have to think outside the box, and that's really how you find outsized returns. So yeah, not only did poker train my brain for crypto, I think it also taught me important lessons around mental like resilience, psychology, and being okay with uncertainty, volatility, and being okay with losing. I think that's the most important thing. You have to be okay with losing, right? You can't let one loss like dictate how you feel at that time, right? You just have to keep going. You have to have this innate belief in yourself. You have to be obsessive. If you don't love the game, then you're never going to be good at it. I know people that get into markets or poker because they want to make money, but those people get wrecked, right? They lose money. The best players, the best traders, they just love the game. They love markets. They love poker. It mentally stimulates them, and that love for the game allows them to put in the hours. Like poker, it's funny. Like nowadays, like I really don't like playing poker. I don't really get joy out of it. It does feel like work to me. But right now, markets, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play, right? I think everyone needs to find something that looks like work to others, but feels like play for them, right? That's the only way to actually get good at something. It's like be really passionate about stuff that you love doing that other people don't love doing. And like that's your edge, right? And that's how you actually get good. If it was easy, then everyone would be doing it, and then everyone would make the same amount of money. Because it's hard, like that's why there's outsized returns to be made in crypto. That being said, I'm not saying I'm like a really good trader or anything, right? I think I'm like okay. I think I'm like, I mean, I have like a decent track record. Yeah, but I mean, I'm not like, yeah. Like I don't want to be like come across as like someone that is, like claims to be good or anything, right? But I do think that these lessons are important for anyone to at least think about, right? There's always luck involved when it comes to things. Maybe I'm not even good, right? Like maybe I just got lucky like 10 times in a row, right? There's survivorship bias there, right? Even with like in markets, right? You see this headline of a guy making $1 million off meme coins, and it's like, oh my god, like I want to be that guy. And then, but you don't hear about like 1,000 people that like lost like 99% of their like portfolio because of meme coins. But you only hear about the one person because like that actually gets headlines. I mean, yeah, I mean, you don't need me to tell you that, but always understand that yes, like hard work leads. You just have to put in the work, and then over time, you should get good results. Also understand that there's always luck involved when it comes to these things, and never think like that you solved the game or anything, right? Because everyone's getting better, right? You probably got a lot better with poker or like markets in the past 2 years. I mean, so has everyone else, right? So you just have to get better at a faster rate than everyone else, and that part is really, really hard. Lastly, I think when I played poker, I would look up to like these professionals, right? Like Phil Ivey, Garrett Adelstein, and Phil Ivey had this really interesting interview back then, where I think in 2003 or 4, he was at the WSOP main event, and he like got coolered by Chris Moneymaker, right? He finished in 10th place. He was like objectively like the best player in like the last 10, but he literally just got unlucky and then lost to Chris Moneymaker. And in an interview, he said that like when he lost, like he felt like the wind got knocked out of him. But looking back, he thinks of that as like he thinks fondly of that event, because if he really thinks about it, right? Because he lost to Chris Moneymaker was able to win the World Series of Poker, and then that kind of kickstarted the poker boom, because this guy named Moneymaker, this random accountant, just won like millions of dollars playing this random poker game, right? And that really, got national headlines everywhere. It actually got more people into the game, like even me, right? I'm part of the Moneymaker effect. I mean, yeah, when I played against him, I was like, hey, can I take a photo, right? Right as I was about to leave. And Phil Ivey, even though he, probably like lost out of like millions of EV that day in 2003, in hindsight, he says that, yeah, like I probably made more money like losing that big hand because it got more people into the game. And and I think generally in life, I mean, this applies to everyone, right? But a lot of bad stuff happens in life. Like I've lost money, I've like family loss, like all that stuff, right? And when you're dealing with that pain, whether it be emotional or physical, like you break a leg or something, like in that moment, like it sucks, right? Like your leg hurts or like you're crying and it sucks. But for example, like when I lost my mom to cancer, like that was tough, and it sucked. But looking back, it's like, yeah, like I mean that does suck, but I think that helped me like become develop to be like the man I am today, because like back then, like I was like really like our family like was really poor, and then she didn't have like a college degree, and then like I think as a result of that, I was driven to do well in school. I went to a good college, business degree. I mean, I don't really use that business degree anymore, but it's like like looking back, like it's just a speck of dust, right? Like humans are really good at overcoming obstacles. Things suck really bad at the time, but looking back, it's like, yeah, like I'm happy that happened for me. Even in crypto, poker, right? It's like like for crypto, I got wrecked in Vegas, but if I didn't get wrecked, then I probably wouldn't be like as good as I was in 2020, right? And in crypto, like I've gotten rugged, I've gotten destroyed, I've like made some bad plays in the past, and like it really sucked at the time, right? I sometimes I felt like giving up, but because I was able to get through those obstacles, I think I'm like a better person, right? In general. And poker players, like people that that you even look up to, like even Garrett Adelstein that I mentioned earlier, he's buff, he's good looking, he's rich. I mean, like wow, like I want to be like him. He must be happy. But he went on this podcast a few years ago, and he talked about being depressed. And it's like, wow, like from the outside, it seems like people have everything, but like everyone deals with demons. Like everyone has ups and downs. Everyone struggles, right? And because poker players go through, like all the poker pros, like we go through the same stuff, right? Ups and downs, volatility. we all understand each other. It's like, yeah, like, we've all gone through these ups and downs, but we're here together. And we kind of have, I think we all have like this mutual respect for each other, right? Like any form of poker pro, like current or past. And it's okay to struggle. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel these emotions. But just understand that, like there's always light at the end of the tunnel, right? Anyways, I'm not sure. I'm kind of rambling at this point. I'm not sure what I wanted to say there. But yeah, I think poker is a brilliant game. I think it really did help me get to where I'm at in crypto. At the time, I didn't really understand it, but I think poker allows you to bet big when the time warrants it, right? And be okay with taking losses, and it helps you become a good loser, which I think is really, really important. It also allows you to think of everything objectively, right? Take the emotions out of it, which has its pros and cons. But I think the qualities that make a good poker player also make for a good trader, whether it be TradFi or crypto. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and see you later, humble farmers. Bye-bye.